The story begins with our MC questioning if it's wrong to fall in love with a game's heroine, especially if there are two of them. Moreover, are you willing to accept that one of them is fated to die? But what if you can actually change their fate, but the only way to do it is to win a losing event of inevitable defeat? For Kenya Mitsurugi, he's willing to brave it all, given how those heroines saved him. It's only fair that it's his turn to save them this time. Two mecha machines are in an intense battle until one of them cuts the other down in one fell swoop. With that, the battle is ended. Player 1 Sword wins. The commentator announces that the winner of the Night of Giants Season 6 World Championship Singles is none other than the Sword. On the other side of the screen, Kenya rises from his chair and lets out an excited cheer. Finally, he heaves a sigh of relief, removing his VR as he does so. So this Gundam-like VR game is called Night of Giant, aka KOJ. It's a popular VR game where fighters play as robots called KOG. Right now, Kenya has just been named the winner of the World Championship, with its fight aired online worldwide. The commentators are busy exchanging their thoughts about Kenya's fight, and even the chat room is blowing up with how amazing it was. Just a heads up, Kenya's a pretty good player, at least that's what the streets are saying. For him, he's not even that interested in the championship itself, but this time it's different. The commentators wrap up their exchange and shift their focus to Player Sword to interview him, leaving Kenya a little fidgety. As they asked how he was feeling, Kenya got right into it and asked a single question. Is there really no route to save the heroines Kaguya and Reina at all? There was a pregnant pause on the commentator's end as the chat started pouring in. Here he goes again. Does this guy ever get tired of asking that? He shouldn't even be asking a question like this in the first place. Kenya patiently waits in line while the commentator looks troubled, not knowing what to do. She mutters on the earpiece asking what to do, while Kenya cries out from the other line that he's fine with even just a hint. After a few moments, the commentator announces that they'll be cutting off the interview since the team match is about to start, even with poor Kenya saying he's okay with a simple yes or no answer. The chat room isn't any kinder, calling him desperate, and it was pretty evident that the commentator was doing her best to ignore him too. With that, the commentator cuts off the interview even though our hero desperately calls out from the other side. He slumps over his desk, dejected at what happened. Yes, he's desperate, and do you know why? It's because of these girls, Kaguya and Reina. Kenya stares at the resin standees he has of the two, thinking how they're not just heroines from the game. They're his saviors, which is why he doesn't want to give up this time. You see, Kenya had a pretty rough life. Our hero's parents divorced when he was just in middle school, with both of them having someone else they loved. Pretty crappy for parents, right? Poor Kenya tried to stop them from divorcing when he was in middle school, but his parents were too selfish to listen to him. In the end, they abandoned him completely, leaving Kenya with only child support and a small room. As if being left by himself isn't bad enough, Kenya suffered yet another hardship that made his life turn for the worse. One day, he witnessed his classmates bullying a fellow classmate. Whether it's his strong sense of justice, pure stupidity, or even both, Kenya intervened and saved that classmate from the bullies. It should be pretty cool, right? A knight saving a damsel in distress? Wrong. Kenya became the bully's next target. The poor guy felt every textbook bullying technique. His desk was vandalized with a bunch of bad words that are not YouTube safe to say aloud. He was isolated, and even all his belongings were trashed. The ever-useless teachers didn't know what to do with the bullies, and no one dared to intervene, so it's just Kenya alone. Despite suffering from such, Kenya tried his best not to pay any attention to the bullies, hoping they'd get tired and quit. But that's where he's wrong again. Apparently his nonchalant attitude got on their nerves, so they decided to get physical with him. Poor beaten Kenya was dumped in the trash under the pouring rain. This time he really felt to the bones how agonizing the bullying was. But there's something much worse than that. The feeling of loneliness. He tried to reach out to his parents, but they don't want to be part of his world anymore. In turn, Kenya almost didn't want to be part of this world either, since he has no reason to live. That's when he heard Kaguya calling out to him to snap out of his daze. Kenya turns to her voice, thinking how no one would even want to look at him. And then there's Kaguya and Reina. She calls out to him, encouraging him to continue their battle. He turns and takes both of their hands, changing the trajectory of the course of his life. There's Kaguya Akagami, a girl who seems a bit cool but is actually really kind. Reina Sylphide, on the other hand, is a cool girl who refuses to show her emotions. These are the two girls Kenya fell in love with. The world of KOG became his only hobby, and as if fate was finally on his side, the game also released a story mode. Kenya ultimately stopped going to school and spent most of his time playing KOG. Who knew that calling out to Kenya and looking at him was enough for him to be saved? He would have continued living like this for the rest of his life, or so he thought. Kenya found out later on that life's not smooth sailing. He discovers that the heroines die, starting with Kaguya. In her dying breath, she tells Kenya that she loves him, and it's the same case with Reina. The sight of them dying before him left Kenya in a delirious state. If he chooses Kaguya, Reina will die. And if he chooses Reina, then the other would die. Why did one of them always have to end up dying? It doesn't matter what route he takes or patterns he tries. The heroine he chooses will live, and the other one will end up dying. Is it too much to ask just to live together with them? Kenya even tries researching by digging further on the creator's side. But even the latter is quiet about the girl's survivability. He spends hours researching online until he stumbles upon something that may help him figure something out. The early game losing event. The battle event with 1 KOG versus 100. Kenya reads through the mechanics, which require a normal machine with no repair kit to fight against 100 mass-produced machines. No matter what angle he looks at it, it's a losing battle. He tries fishing for information at the chat room, but even they're saying it's impossible. He's not at the level where he can win it. He stared blankly at his phone before the image of both Kaguya and Reina's dead bodies flashed in his mind. He figured that if there really is a way for them to be able to laugh together again by winning the battle event, then he wants to save them. Kenya puts on his VR headset again and logs online, fully believing that he just needs to keep trying because this time it's his turn to save them. He takes part in the battle event, but as expected, he gets taken down each time, time after time after time. Whether it's by being cut down, shot down, stabbed, or even exploded. It's a never-ending case of breakdown. Kenya hurls his headset in frustration. Maybe they're right. He can't win this impossible game. He stares at the ceiling in silence before remembering the last image of his parents walking out the door. Of course, it also reminded him of one of the worst times of his life, which made him rethink things. If he gives up now, then nothing will change from the past. He picks up his headset and realizes that this is the only way left for him. So with renewed vigor, he puts it on again. They shouldn't underestimate a shut-in loner gamer who has all the time and determination in the world. Along with that realization, Kenya also decided to go all in. To win this event, he needs to have greater piloting skills, so he decides to train with a wooden katana to improve his swordsmanship. He even started playing through blindfolded matches, enhancing his focus as he did so. He even studied the enemy's algorithm and did extensive research just to save both Reina and Kaguya. This had become his daily routine, and before he knew it, 2 months had already passed. Kenya managed to take down 90 out of the 100 KOGs in the event, leaving him with 10 more to go. But this is where it gets tricky because the enemy's movements and patterns change each time. The 91st KOG attacks him from above while 3 others gang up on him, but Kenya was too fast for them. As he jumped to evade their attacks, he cut the other 3 down in a spinning maneuver, instantly securing 93 kills. As he did so, he doubted himself for a second, wondering if he could win. But just as quickly he cast that thought away. He had to win, with Kaguya's face flashing in his mind. He quickly kills KOGs 94 to 96 just as the 3 other KOGs shoot him down. Kenya looks up just in time to see the missiles about to reach him, quickly followed by an explosion. Kenya miraculously managed to survive those missiles, with only a malfunctioning arm. He braves the fire, this time thinking of Reina and how much he wants to see her laugh. Kenya makes a lunge for KOGs 97 to 99, springing behind the last KOG. If there's a way to save both Kaguya and Reina, then he wants to see it through. With that, he slashes the 100th KOG, taking down the last one. He watches the last one explode while in the real world he finally relaxes the grip on the controllers. Finally, he did it. He was about to lose consciousness due to extreme exhaustion when a message popped up, congratulating Kenya on his victory. It made him wonder if there are even more challenges ahead of this event. As soon as he said it, another prompt appeared, asking if he still had the will to change the world. Change the world? He'll change the world, no matter how many times it takes, as long as it's for Kaguya and Reina. With that, he presses the yes button, quickly followed by a hole appearing beneath him. Kenya barely registered what happened to him before he fell into the abyss, and the words "good luck" were the last thing he saw before he fell. Back into his room? Just what the heck happened? He shakes his head, thinking he really fell into a hole. But wait, when did he take his headset off? Moreover, it's gone, even the controllers are nowhere to be seen, and those were hella expensive too. He checks under the table when something rustles behind him. Kenya grabs the envelope and eyes it with a confused look. It says on the paper, Asgard Knight Academy, complete with a coat of arms. Did Kenya ever have this? He opens the envelope and sees that it has an entry approval letter inside, for him. Apparently he's enrolled at Asgard Knight Academy. And no, this is not the Asgard we know where Thor and Loki came from. Just then he hears something zoom by right outside his window. So when he opens it, can you imagine our hero's shock when he sees 2 KOGs zooming past him? From the looks of it, these were KOG Equis or whatever that means. Kenya's eyes almost twitched with how he found this whole situation absurd. He has to be dreaming, right? He pinches his cheek hoping to wake himself up, but nope. It really hurts, which means this is his reality now. He's actually in the world of KOG. Somewhere else, a cup of sake is placed in front of a family portrait as Kaguya says a little prayer before steeling herself. Meanwhile, another character is seen being escorted into the academy, as Kenya thought that the world he had always dreamed of would actually come true. Kenya washes his face and looks at his reflection, thinking of what he should do in this world. Kenya holds the academy's uniform in his hands. He can't believe he's actually holding it. He has seen it one too many times in the game, but looking at the rest of the garments, he can't help but cringe. This is not some kind of cosplay, right? Suddenly his phone rings, or at least this world's version of his phone, which he checks. According to the notification, the entrance ceremony is about to begin. He hurriedly puts on the uniform, deciding he'll just go with it. He'll think about what to do later. He leaves the student dormitory running and arrives right in front of the school just in time. Now that he's here, Kenya notices that it's not that different from his original world. He sees a couple of students ahead wearing the same uniform, and according to his phone, he's at the right place. Moments later, a shiny black car stops in front of the gates and the students start chattering. A servant steps to one side holding a bag while another opens the door to the car. A young man gets out of the car and tells the older man that he wants to go to school alone. The older man took it as a joke and called this regal young man Lord. And yes, that's definitely his name, we're not kidding. The name kinda fits though, since this Lord dude is the second prince of the Asgard Empire. Not only is he royalty, but he's also a genius in combat who possesses both skills and character admired by the Imperial Knights. Despite all these, Lord didn't leave much of an impression on other students since he didn't pilot a KOG. As Lord, his servant, and his lapdog passed by, the latter called out to Kenya, who was deep in thought. Before he realizes what happened, Lord's lapdog smacks the living daylights out of Kenya. The former glares, angry that Kenya, a mere second-class Imperial citizen, dares to look at them directly. Our poor hero has a hard time understanding what the other meant, and when he tries to introduce himself, the lapdog cuts him off. He grabs Kenya by the collar, saying he's not interested in his name, and points at the band on Kenya's arm. It's the proof of a second-class Imperial citizen. As if to prove a point, he points to everyone else. Every other student who has the same armband as Kenya is kneeling with their head down. Lord's lapdog points out how this is how second-class citizens should behave in the presence of the royal family. Seeing his schoolmates like that, Kenya finally remembered that this is that kind of world. The annoying lapdog continues that being second class only puts them ahead of the third class, and that they should always remember that they're only alive thanks to the mercy of the royal family. With all that said, he glares back at Kenya and jabs his fingers at the latter, asking why our hero wasn't showing his gratitude. Given everything that was said and done, Kenya was like a deer in headlights. But now that he thought about it, there was definitely a scene like this in the game. This is the part when the mob kills you at the beginning to teach the player some sense of the game. Even Kenya knows he's screwed, but he can't do crap because his legs are frozen. If anything, he's reminded of the times he was bullied. And when he made no motion to move, this only made Lord's lapdog angrier. The latter draws his sword, taking Kenya's lack of movement as defiance. Finally, Lord steps in and says it's not worth the bloodshed, but the other refuses to back down. Lord, His Highness may be merciful, but he believes this is necessary for Kenya to learn his place. It's no good. This lapdog really lost his mind, holding his sword high and ready to strike down Kenya, calling him a part of the inferior place in the process. Kenya tries to stop him, but it's no use, so he just readies himself for the blow. Only it doesn't happen. There was a flurry of movement as Kenya was side drop kicked out of the lapdog's way. A girl did that and apologized on behalf of Kenya, too. Our poor hero now has more injuries than before, just as the girl goes on, fervently apologizing for how much of an idiot Kenya is. The girl promises that our hero will learn his lesson, so he should get a pass now, no? Of course, Kenya was about to ask something but only got his head bashed on the ground as the girl tells him to apologize too. In the end, he conceded and shouted his apology. The second prince steps in, saying he forgives Kenya and tells the other guys to stand down since he doesn't want to see bloodshed so early in the morning. The latter finally did as he was told, sheathing his sword and telling Kenya he should be grateful. They finally walked away with every second-class student still kneeling. All of them waited an extra minute before getting up, starting with the girl who saved Kenya, as if we don't know who it is already based on the hair alone. She can't help but sigh at all the shenanigans this early in the morning, then finally turns to our hero, asking if he was an idiot. Kenya still has his head on the ground and can only see the girl's legs, listening as she goes on rambling about how they must bow before the royal family or else they'll be executed for disrespect. Finally, the big reveal. It's Kaguya Akagami. Kenya is now on his feet, trembling and standing face to face with one of the two people he loves the most. Kenya couldn't help but full-on cry as he hugged Kaguya. Of course, the latter smacks the living daylights out of him. How dare this perv put his hand on her? This Kenya idiot is a perv too, huh? She turns away, blushing as she tells him that she regrets helping Kenya. Despite the evident palm mark on Kenya's face, he can't help but smile since it really is Kaguya. Our hero stands, apologizing and saying it was his bad. Kaguya just reminded him of someone he knew who passed. While doing so, he also thanks Kaguya as he finally extends his hand to introduce himself. Kaguya stares at it for a moment before taking his hand in hers, saying she kind of understands what he felt, given how everyone in this world has their own struggles. This would have been a sweet moment had Kenya not gone full simp, almost losing his crap as he clutches Kaguya's hand. Thankfully, Kaguya didn't notice, sympathizing with our hero about how she understands that even if Kenya doesn't want to bow down, she's just as furious as he is. She also applauds him for his guts, and with that, he walks off, but not without saying Kenya should also hurry along. Our hero thanks him, calling her by her first name basis already, something she's not too keen about. At least she tries not to be. Kenya was so caught up in all the excitement of being transported into this world that he forgot some of the elements in the game. He turns to the flag of Asgard, thinking that this country was once called Yamato, but is now under the control of the Asgard Empire. Now, onto the 13th Asgard Colony Knight Academy's entrance ceremony. Every student is lined up as the headmaster explains that the people entering the academy will be granted second-class citizenship of the Empire. But along with these privileges come responsibilities. For these, they are required to train diligently to contribute to the Empire's growth. Upon hearing this, Kaguya couldn't help but refrain from a wince. Let's talk about the Asgard Empire. This impressive empire controls nearly half the world's territory, so they're basically the equivalent of the British Empire in our history. You know, just like what Pocahontas' dad said in the movie, these white men are dangerous. They've practically conquered the whole world, even reaching the country of Yamato. The Asgard influence extends both on land and at sea, and they spared no one. Everyone else was no match against them because the Asgard Empire boasts their tactical weapon of pride, the Knight of Giant, you know, the KOG. With KOGs at their disposal, conquering Yamato was easily done, with the latter becoming Asgard's 13th colony. To subjugate the people of the conquered lands, the Asgard Empire categorized a hierarchy between the second and third classes, making them their slaves. Back to the present. Kenya and the others continue listening as the higher-ups call in their next speaker. A white-haired man goes to the podium and introduces himself as Sieg Silfid, the military attaché of Colony 13. The local Asgardians excitedly murmur among themselves because this man's a legend. It's the war god Sieg, after all. He continues that he'll evaluate each student's capabilities one by one. It doesn't matter which class they belong to, because their merits are all that matter. Compared to the locals, the second-class citizen students were more wary that the war god would be watching them. Kaguya looks a little distressed, thinking about how the former strongest knight of the Empire is in charge of their military classes. To her surprise, Kenya doesn't look fazed at all. He was even smiling, much to her shock. He's doing that thing he did earlier, defying everyone, even in the face of royalty. She notices how Kenya stared straight at the enemy's eyes, unwavering. With that, the entrance ceremony concluded, but Kaguya is still thinking about Kenya. Is he a fool or maybe a big shot in this academy? As she makes her way to her class, she takes a photo out of her pocket, thinking and hoping that maybe Kenya is one of them. That's when it dawned on her. How did this Kenya guy even know her name in the first place? Speak of the devil, Kenya appears before Kaguya, cheery as ever, prompting her to wonder if this is some kind of front for something. Our hero immediately sits beside her, alerting Kaguya. Why the heck is he suddenly sitting next to her? But Kenya ignores her question and introduces himself to her with a bit more air of suavity this time. Kaguya can see through his fake act, and maybe she just overestimated him earlier. No amount of suave will let her forget what happened early this morning, you know? Still, Kenya continues that they should get along as Yamato people. Either this boy is really dumb, or he doesn't know what's up, because he still casually used the term Yamato. Kaguya warns him not to use it again since if he gets caught it will be punishable by the law. Now that knocked some sense and fear into Kenya. He didn't know it was that serious. As fate would have it, they hear an unwelcome voice, silencing the whole class. An Asgardian local walks in who announces that the second prince will be joining their class. Like, way to make the classroom like an airport with the way he announces His Highness's arrival. Lord walks in, so every second-class citizen got on their knees while the local Asgardians bowed. After what might have been the longest 10 seconds of tense silence, Lord let out an exasperated sigh and commanded everyone to be at ease. He doesn't want to disrupt the class's training, so he refrains everyone from kneeling from now on. Meanwhile, Kaguya teases Kenya that he should bow his head properly, with the latter saying he just wasn't used to doing this much. Ultimately, he tells her that he might as well join them since he can't afford to die in this place. That statement catches Kaguya off guard. With that same steely look in his eyes, he tells Kaguya that there's something he needs to do, and he'll do everything he can to achieve it. That look tugged at Kaguya's heart, but it soon disappeared. given how Kenya went ahead and took her hands in his again. Kaguya pinches his hands away from her like, is this his new modus? A new pickup line? Whatever his agenda may be, Kaguya refuses to fall for it, but the blush on her cheeks betrays her real emotions. Still, she tells him that if he's going to bother someone, then bother other people. Her attempt at pushing him away only made Kenya fall for her even more, granting him tsundere death. Our hero was down bad for her. She almost sent him to heaven with that tsundere attitude of hers. Just then, their classmates start murmuring over a certain someone in the hallway catching Kenya's attention. Outside, they kept talking about the long-haired silver girl, wondering if she was the Ice Princess. From her back profile alone, no one can deny the fact that her beauty precedes her, with Kenya almost going feral again at the mere sight of this girl. Kaguya kind of teases him again, surprised that Kenya knows who this girl is. How could he not? At just 16 years old, this girl is said to be a KOG pilot prodigy who is on par with a holy knight. Who else could it be but the daughter of the war god Sieg and the Ice Prince herself, Reina Sylphide? Finally, the other heroine Kenya wants to save appears, Reina Sylphide. Our homeboy cries tears of joy, feeling incredulous as he finally sees Reina in the flesh. Kaguya can only narrow her eyes before pulling Kenya's ear. That was more than enough to pull him back to reality. Just look at her. A while ago, she said she'd rather have Kenya bother somebody else. Look at Kaguya now, getting all riled up seeing Kenya fawning over the Empire's it girl. To both their shock, Reina pulls out the chair right next to Kenya, sandwiching him between the two girls. So this is our Shinjirei Asuka love triangle, no? Our homeboy may be a dropout, but even he knows that first impressions are important. With that, he clears his throat, an action that causes the others to turn and watch if he dares to talk to the Ice Queen. Kenya faces Reina, introducing himself, but the Ice Queen flat out tells him that she's not interested in him. That's an instant and harsh cold death as expected of Reina. Kaguya can't help but chuckle at what she's just witnessed, finding it amusing that Kenya actually had the courage to do such a thing. Kenya's popsicle figure remains frozen until it starts to thaw. His simp-like behavior was enough to thaw the ice, and he felt giddy at how cool and solitary Reina was. Enough of the shenanigans. Someone claps their hand to call everybody's attention as he flamboyantly introduces himself as the instructor of their class. He's Alfred, and you can already tell he's every bit as conceited. His theatrics were cut short when he spotted someone familiar sitting in the back row of the class. It was the second prince, Lord himself. Alfred bowed his head immediately, apologizing and admitting that His Highness's presence at the academy would be an inconvenience for Lord. Still, he's honored to meet the second prince. Lord tells him that he entered the academy on his own, and it would be great if Alfred treated him just like any other student in the class. Meanwhile, Kenya somewhat felt for their instructor. It was obvious the older man was flustered with how the prince waltzed into the academy unannounced. But with Lord's permission, Alfred raised his head and thanked the latter as he finally began the class. Of course, he'll be the one supervising the class in their pilot class, focusing on the students' control over the Knight of Giant. Alfred reiterates the importance of KOG and how it's the tactical weapon that the Empire takes pride in. Students who have proven their abilities as effective KOG pilots will be granted knighthood. He stresses how first-class students are expected to strive toward knighthood, setting an example for the second-class students. The latter can also attain knighthood depending on their abilities, with Alfred urging them to do their best. With that, he wraps up the orientation and directs them to look at the schedule on their device. Kenya checks his, and soon enough the whole class is directed to the key simulator, where everyone's aptitude will be evaluated. He cites that as long as the students read the manual handed to them beforehand, they should be able to operate the simulator. Seeing the simulator alone is enough to get Kenya all excited and giddy, while the rest of his second-class classmates only look distraught. Confused as to why they were acting that way, he asks Kaguya why everyone looks so glum. The girl can only sigh, telling him he should just watch so he can understand. And she can't believe this dude called her by her first name again, then added that what he's about to witness is a show for sick freaks. As if on cue, Alfred initiates the evaluation and calls out the first two participants. True enough, every single second-class student got smoked by first-class students. The disparity in their skills and knowledge was obvious. While second-class students can barely make their KOGs move, the first-class students can already use different weapons to take down the former. Meanwhile, the rest of the class watches the simulation on a screen, and even Kenya can't help but feel bad for his own kind. There's a showcase of this huge gap in power, so much that it looks like a warning. Kaguya explains that the first-class students get to practice beforehand, but for folks like them, this will be their first time. The match they were watching just now finally wrapped up, with both the first-class student and the second-class student facing each other. Alfred scolds the latter for standing idly and refusing to do the thing. The second-class student trembles in frustration when Alfred forcibly bows his head, annoyed that this kid is wasting their time. With his head held low, the student announces his loss. But it wasn't enough for Alfred. In fact, he even got angrier. He starts shouting, saying the boy's voice is too soft and that he used the incorrect words. "It's my loss. Thank you for guiding me, a second class." The kid shouts with his head bowed and tears in his eyes. One of the first-class students who is watching from the side relishes what's happening, munching as he tells the other second-class students that they'll live their lives submitting to them. With that, Alfred calls the next participant, Good Samaka, the same guy who was talking just now. It's pretty ironic that he's named Good when he's anything but such. Fighting against him is Kaguya Akagami, with Good grinning and saying he'll guide Kaguya very well. Oh good, he's a lecher and a pig. Pick a struggle, bro. Kaguya gets inside the simulator, checking the controls and everything else. She memorized the manual, so it should be fine. She slaps both of her cheeks, hyping herself up to do this. Meanwhile, Good's all excited, eager to see someone trying to act tough like Kaguya, only for her to end up crying later. With both students ready, the battle commenced. In his mind, Kenya gives a little cheer to Kaguya, while the latter braces herself to make the first move. Not a moment later, her KOG makes a break for it and lunges toward Good's KOG. The latter is impressed seeing how Kaguya was able to do this much, even for a beginner, which just fuels Kaguya's rage. She tells him not to underestimate her, drawing her sword to attack, but Good just steps aside and trips her. Kaguya falls flat on the ground with her back exposed, facing the tip of Good's blade as she turns. He's disappointed that their match is already over in a flash, and here he thought she was going to entertain him a bit more. Kaguya only glares back at him while the other first-class students tell Good to pipe it down. He doesn't want to look like he's bullying her, no? The fight continues on, with Kaguya taking more than a couple of hits, yet managing to stand and defend herself continuously. From the outside, the first-class students were already telling her to just give up, as expected of side characters who know nothing. This is exactly why y'all are just side characters. But for the Ice Princess, she could easily see that Kaguya is improving at an outstanding rate. The latter may even be able to win it. True to Reina's observation, Kaguya already has the hang of the KOG's controls. She outmaneuvers Good and finally kicks him in the head, earning a cheer from Kenya. Of course, being the sore loser that he is, Good's starting to get annoyed. Finally, the students outside notice that Good is on the losing end, but there's no way he'd lose, right? Alfred, on the other hand, clearly sees that he is. Why is Good even taking this long to take a mere second-class citizen down? Is he trying to fall on his face in front of his highness? The fight continues with Kaguya shooting Good's KOG. But something's wrong. Kenya notices there's something funny going on in the damage input. They should be the same, but for some reason Kaguya is taking more damage. That's when he hears Alfred muttering from the side, grumbling about how he needs to do more work. Their instructor fumbles with the controller angrily, and that's when Kenya realizes what the former is doing. He's using a handicap system to change the damage input. Alfred obviously doesn't want Kaguya to win, so much that he's even pulling some shady crap like this. On the other side, even Kaguya struggles with the fight, seeing how her attacks hit, but there's not much damage. Good also notices this, but who cares? There's no way a second class like her would win against a first class. With that, Good delivers the finishing blow and cuts Kaguya down, diminishing her points in one go. Good emerges from the simulator with his friends already waiting for him. Even they admit that they feared that the former would lose. And from the haggard looks of Good, it doesn't look far off. Still, Good makes a show, wiping his sweat and saying he just gave his opponent a little handicap because he's good-natured like that. That's when they hear Kaguya's voice saying it was weird. They turn to her as she goes on, saying what happened just now was straight up weird. She angrily marches to them, even though Kenya tries to calm her down and hold her back. Being the feisty girl that she is, she refuses to acknowledge this while Good remains unbothered. Kaguya takes this to Alfred, saying, Good must have pulled something back there. She details how the damage input started acting strangely halfway through the battle. She had just told him how unfair this was when Alfred smacked her so hard she fell to her knees. Kaguya was struck so hard her lips started to bleed. As Alfred looked down and told her that she shouldn't get the wrong idea. It doesn't matter if she approves of it or not. The written rule dictates that the loser will bow down to the winner and admit defeat. He tells her explicitly that she lost to them, the Empire, so as the loser she has to listen to the winner. If not, then there won't be a place for her in this world. To make matters worse, Good chimes in, saying she could always go back to third class, though a life worse than livestock is waiting for her there. Everybody in first class erupts in laughter, mocking Kaguya's defeat, as she could only hang her head and cry. They even have the audacity to tell her not to cry, and these are just the rules of the world. While everyone else gangs up on her, Kenya watches from behind, trying to rein himself in. He knows he just came into this world and should keep a low profile, so he should just mind his own business and do nothing. He grips his fist tighter to stop himself from doing something rash. Meanwhile, Good approaches Kaguya and lifts her face. Seeing that she's quite the looker, he even dared to make her his sex slave, which only made Kaguya even more uncomfortable. But the lecher that he is, Good's already spewing crap. If she serves him right, he could allow her to bear his child, and that child would be a first-class citizen. That should be good enough for her, so he orders her to bow down now. Kaguya's head drops, finding it hard to say the word through her tears, as Good continues to mock her. She raises her voice, and just when she is about to say it, Kenya grabs her by the arm, saying she doesn't need to do that. Kenya tells her that it should have been her win earlier, while Good starts to stress eat again since he was just about to get to the good part, you know? What a pig. Anyway, Kenya knows there are still a lot of things he doesn't know, but what he does know is that he shouldn't stand out too much. He turns to Good and even dared to call him by his first name, which is informal. Kenya tells the latter how he also wants to be guided by Good, but the pig's not too interested, like what's in there for him. There was a pause as Kenya thought for a moment, but all he could think about was how Kaguya was there for this morning, even though she could have just let him be. The image of her crying face flashes in his mind, making him think that the Kaguya he loves hasn't changed even in this world. Kenya tells Good that if he loses, he'll do anything. He'll even get naked on his knees. In his mind, his resolve is solidified. He's going to protect his heroines. Good's not too keen on his proposal, saying he's not interested in seeing naked men. But Kenya continues saying that if the latter loses, then he will never lay a hand on Kaguya again. That hit a nerve. Good snaps, telling Kenya he has no right to act all cocky when he's a mere second class. So he tells Kenya that he'll make the other his slave if our hero loses. Kenya's delighted, smiling through his anger as he cracks his knuckles. Good better keep his promise while Kaguya panics, saying Kenya shouldn't drag himself into this. But Kenya only shushes her, saying he just wants to return the favor from this morning. Then he turns to Alfred, semi-asking for permission. He's sure the instructor won't mind, right? Kenya said it, smiling, though it was obvious he was trying to hold back. Alfred was startled, but more importantly, this boy seemed oddly confident. Just who is he? If anything, he can't allow anything to happen in front of His Highness. Plus, he could always use the handicap system, so there won't be any problem. Alfred approves of their mock battle just as Kaguya calls out to Kenya again. Before she could even say anything, he assured her that everything would be alright and that he should trust her. Just now, the image of his back reminds her so much of a certain someone important to her. And it was even more evident as Kenya tells her that he'll win. Kenya walks over to the machine, thinking that he's already doing his first fight here, and he even proclaimed a pretty bold statement just now. He checks inside, seeing a real cockpit for the first time. But he wasn't scared because it looked exactly how it was in the game. With that, Kenya and Good both gear up, excited to welcome each other. Kenya settles inside the cockpit and checks his equipment. For his weapons, he has a gun and a one-handed sword, and a shield, and all of these are fixed. There's also a controller that he's all too familiar with. Everything in front of him is tools and equipment that he has seen more than his parents' faces. He smiles a little, thinking that this is his first time, and at the same time, it's not to operate a KOG. But being here, it's still the most comforting place for him. Finally, their battle starts, but let's take a moment of silence to appreciate Kenya's KOG. He boasts a one-handed sword called Gladius paired with Scudum, his shield. And let's not forget his gunner called Serpent. And the silence extends longer, making the second-class students anxious since Kenya still hasn't moved an inch. One student even adopted a loser mentality, believing that our hero is no match for the first class. Meanwhile, the first-class students are already making fun of Kenya. They think our hero is all bark and no bite, but Kaguya remains steadfast, even though she is a little nervous. Good, on the other hand, already has his KOG's weapon out. He gets into position, thinking of ways on how to take down Kenya. He's still pissed at how the second class is oozing with confidence. Still, there's no way he'd lose to the likes of Kenya. Our hero remains immobile as he sees Good dash straight to him. You could almost hear how much Good scoffed at Kenya, seeing how the latter's all quiet. Could he be scared to move? Ha! Kenya, on the other hand, checks his controls. When he sees he can move the KOG just like his own arms and legs, he readies himself for the battle. Outside, Kaguya looks on, getting anxious at what's about to happen. Back to the fight. Good leaps high in the air with his sword out, ready to deliver a killing strike and calling Kenya an inferior being. Kenya closes his eyes and imagines a drop of water falling and making ripples. Very Japanese of him, and you know crap's about to go down. Good's sword didn't make contact as he hit the ground instead. Kenya's not here? He was just about to ask where our hero is when he got cut off. Literally. Kenya decapitated his KOG in one fell swoop, proclaiming that he's the world's strongest as he did. And that he is. In a typical cool guy pose, Kenya waits as the KOG of Good's head explodes from behind him. Victory to player 2, Kenya! The other first-class students look confused. How the heck did he win? And Good actually lost? What even happened? Alfred, on the other hand, is already crashing out in his head. Did this kid just pull a critical move and hit the KOG directly from its blind spot? Everything happened so fast that he didn't even have time to apply the handicap. That's when he realized he was still in the middle of supervising the class. Alfred turns to the first class students, saying this battle doesn't count because the simulator malfunctioned. Well, that eased up the majority of them, because there's no way Good would lose, right? Reina doesn't buy that excuse. Was that really a device malfunction just now? Since Alfred said it was a malfunction, then it's a malfunction. Upon hearing that, Good feels a little relieved because he didn't expect that outcome, although it's obvious that he has some doubts. He uses his KOG's gunner and opens fire at Kenya, going on the offensive. On the other side, Alfred puts the handicap at max output, so Good only needs to land one shot, and Kenya will be a goner. He grins, thinking he has done his job, and that's where he was wrong. Good is full-on crashing out right now because why aren't his attacks landing? Kenya evades them easily, and what's even worse for him is that every single attack of our hero connects. Kenya's KOG is too fast. It almost looks like Good is fighting multiple opponents. He asks Kenya if he just did something. No, he's sure our hero did something. This is plain unfair, so Kenya should fight him square on. Wow, that's really rich coming from you. At the mention of unfair, Kenya points out that they're the ones who are cheating. Kenya uses his gunner and lands a clean hit on Good's KOG, followed by a quick slash. From the outside, Kaguya's mouth hangs open, amazed at what's happening. She can't believe a KOG can even move this freely. All those attacks were enough to make Good dizzy, telling Kenya to stop. You know what? That's a great idea, and Kenya's on board with that. They should wrap this up now. He shifts the controllers and gets into position, with his KOG imitating a swordsman about to draw his sword. Kenya sucks in a deep breath and emits a killer aura so powerful that even Reina grew wary for a bit. She knows something's coming. Kenya channels his inner Zenitsu and pulls a thunder-breathing move, disappearing in a flash and reappearing with a deadly technique. Night Maneuver, Lightning Flurry. Good can only panic as Kenya's KOG delivers lightning-fast multiple blows that send the former's KOG flying. The last strike cut Good's KOG in half as it sent him exploding. Let's see if Alfred counts that as a device malfunction again. Meanwhile, we have Kenya, who aura farmed 1,000 points with that move alone. Kenya gives a nice little stretch. He's still not as good as he was before, but he does want to try some more stuff now that he's here. Just then, his victory was finally confirmed, and the whole batch of second-class students cheered. Alfred is gagged. He didn't expect Kenya would win. Is this kid even really a second-class citizen? He eyes Kenya as the latter exits the simulator, thinking that this kid is on the level of a holy knight, heck, maybe even higher than that. The whole second-class students happily greet him, amazed at what he had just done, with one of them even claiming he's their hope. Kaguya approaches him too, and thanks Kenya, and it would have been a meaningful moment if he didn't pull a kissy face and ask for a reward. Of course, that made Kaguya flustered. She raised her hands ready to smack him, so Kenya held his hands up in surrender. It was just a joke. But he still insists on her calling him Kenya, and he also wants to call her by her first name. That made Kaguya giggle, seeing how hopeless this guy is. Ultimately, she relents, permitting him to call her whatever he likes. That's enough for Kenya, giving a thumbs up since he finally got his wish. Unlike them, who are in a good mood, here we have Good, who came trembling out of the simulator looking worse for wear, before doubling over as he throws up. His classmates were disgusted, but they didn't have any choice when Alfred ordered them to bring Good to the clinic. The instructor massages his forehead in frustration, but back to the matter at hand. Fine, Kenya is the winner for this battle. With that said, he asks if anyone from the first-class students is willing to step up and show our hero the might of the Empire. Suddenly, everyone's all quiet as they refuse to make eye contact with Alfred. Lord watches from the sidelines in silence until someone bravely steps up, saying they'll be Kenya's opponent. Everyone turns to see who said that, and to no one's surprise, it's from Reina. She asks Kenya if he's okay with that, which he says he is. She calls him by his full government name, saying he'll correct her statement from before. She tells him that she's interested in him, and right in front of the whole class salad. Well, since she said it like that, what will Reina do in case Kenya wins, huh? She was taken aback and quickly recovered. She narrowed her eyes, saying she would not get on her knees naked for him. He backs up, saying what he said earlier was just a joke. But in his mind, he's already fawning over Reina's cold gaze, so how about this? If he wins, she can just call him Kenya, and he can call her Reina. Just kidding. Unless... Reina is dumbstruck again at how simple his wish is. She eyes him warily while Kenya just about expected this reaction from her. To his surprise, Reina agrees, tilting her head cutely as she fails to understand this request of his. Alright, that's more than good enough for Kenya, not noticing that Kaguya's already got her brows furrowed. She pinches his cheek, annoyed at how flirty he is with Reina, so Alfred has to clear his throat to get their attention. He turns to Reina, leaving everything in her hands, which she affirms. Alfred leans closer, reminding her that they can't let a second-class citizen become the top of their class no matter what. He cites that he can't show any more screw-ups in front of the second prince, even though Lord seems pretty busy with something else. Anyway, Reina must show the abilities of a first-class student. Reina tells him instead that she doesn't need his unnecessary consideration, aka his handicap system. She glares at him, warning him that if he pulls another stunt like that, then she'll report him to the higher-ups. That was more than enough threat to get Alfred to cooperate. Both Kenya and Reina head to the cockpit, with the former displaying good sportsmanship. She tells him outright that she has no intention of being friendly. But Kenya already knows this, since she isn't called the Ice Princess for nothing. The battle commences with both of them facing each other. He was just about to speak again when Reina rushed toward him in a zigzag motion. That left him speechless since he didn't expect she would be able to move like this at this level. Thankfully, Kenya's reflexes kicked in at the last minute, blocking her sword as she crept up from behind him. Her attack was supposed to be completely out of sight for him, and yet Kenya managed to block it. He only grins, explaining how he knew she was going to attack his blind spot. Thanks to his obsession with the game, Kenya has determined all of his blind spots, which are behind and above. Furthermore, he can also calculate which blind spot would be targeted based on the enemy's position before they disappear. If Reina was going for a one-shot kill, then she'd aim for the cockpit, but it would also mean that the sword's movement would be constricted. Reina only hums, agreeing with what Kenya said as she pulls back and creates a distance between them. She thanks him for sharing all this information, but the very fact that he's doing this only means that Kenya's pretty confident in his abilities. He answers that Reina would figure all of this out sooner or later, even if he didn't say it. She finds Kenya's manner of speaking peculiar since he talks as if he knows her, which he merely brushes off. This time Reina positions herself directly in front of him, determined to shut him up for good. Outside, even the first-class citizens were in awe of the two's ongoing battle. Even if their bet is on Reina, it was clear how she and Kenya are on a completely different level. Kaguya sees this too, making her feel frustrated since she's far behind them. Back to the fight. Kenya parries Reina's attack, but he still applauds her effort. It just needs a little improvement. Now, Reina admits the disparity in their skills, saying how she hasn't struggled this much since fighting her papa. Oh no, kawaii attack, it's just a normal endearment, but hearing her say papa was too much for our homeboy. He quickly brushed it off because he found himself in a dilemma, wondering if it was alright for him to win this easily. As it stands, his fellow second-class students are getting bullied enough as it is. If he becomes the top dog in his class, then who knows how much worse the bullying could get. More importantly, the academy could also deem Kenya as someone dangerous and tag him for assassination. A tad bit extreme, but then again, Asgardians are extremists. When he saw Kaguya was in trouble earlier, Kenya's body moved on its own before he could even process what had happened. But now, if he gains any more attention than this, then it would make his life even more difficult. Following this line of thought, the answer to his question is pretty obvious. With that, Kenya slackens his grip on the controller, thus lowering his defense in the middle of his sword fight with Reina. She noticed this immediately and went in more aggressively, opening up Kenya's defenses. Finally, his torso is exposed. Could this be a trap, or is this the opening she needs? Reina doesn't really have the time to overthink this, so she went for the kill, thrusting her sword straight through Kenya's KOG. Kenya smiles sadly, thinking that Reina won't be calling his name out anytime soon, just as it was announced that she was the winner. Still, he has more important things to do than become the top of the class. With her win, the first-class students cheer her on, finding relief that the skilled second class is finally down. Even Alfred is relieved. This is what's expected from the daughter of the war god Sieg, after all. Compared to them, Lord is the only one amused by Kenya, as he's drawn to our hero's mysterious charm. As for the rest of the second-class students, they're not so bummed out that Kenya lost. Our hero did hold his ground while fighting the Ice Princess after all. Unlike her fellow second class who are feeling festive, Kaguya is feeling anything but such, especially when she replays that last movement Kenya did just then. Reina, who is still inside the simulator, also analyzes that last move. Did Kenya just open himself up for attack? If that was the case, then she was taken pity on, leaving a sour taste in her mouth. Once she was out of the simulator, Reina angrily marched up to him, a rare sight to see the Ice Princess fuming. She grabs him by the collar, asking what the hell he just did back there. Rather than answer her, Kenya bows his head and says the obligatory "I lost" speech, including the "thank you for guiding me" crap. Every first-class student relishes in this, acting all cocky again now that a second-class student is humbled. But Reina's only taken aback. She glares at him again, pointing out that he's far more skilled than she is. Kenya keeps his head down, trying to calm her down in a quiet voice. Since he's like this, she'd understand, right? Her brows furrowed further until she finally understood it when she saw the band on his arm. As frustrated as she was with this win, Reina let it go. She turns her back, apologizing since she didn't think this through. Before she could walk away, Kenya added that they could go all out as long as it's just the two of them. When she heard that, Reina smiled a little and turned to look at Kenya, who was already smiling as well. But since she is the Ice Princess, she needs to be on brand. With a pout, she tries to put up a strong front, telling Kenya that he should keep his promise and finally calling out his name. Kenya-kun! Reina actually called him by his name. It's a major win for our hero, getting all emotional with a matching clenched fist as he celebrates this win. If anything, he didn't think he'd be able to pull something like that, clutching his chest at how he really thought that Reina would hate his guts. Still, he secured the next big thing, which is a meeting with just the two of them. It's basically a date, right? No, it's definitely a date. He claims it. Reina, on the other hand, addresses the rest of the first-class students. She gives them a stare down, scolding them for slacking and saying they should fight more like a first-class student. They can't even do the bare minimum like that, then she'd take them on herself. That was enough to scare these bullies. Speaking of bullies, the aptitude test continued, but the bullying-style fights finally stopped thanks to Reina. Be that as it may, no one has managed to defeat a first-class student since then. All the remaining second-class students bow their heads and thank the first-class students for schooling them. Compared to before, the air had definitely shifted and the feeling of shame wasn't there anymore. As frustrating as it was to lose, every second-class student's spirit was uplifted, seeing Kenya's win from earlier. They crowd around Kenya, celebrating him, which is a stark contrast to his loner self back in his original world. Finally, Alfred announces the end of the aptitude test. Tomorrow, their real training starts, so everyone should be prepared. But before he dismisses them, he gives a special shout-out to Kenya, still sore about the stunt our hero pulled earlier. Just because he's a little capable doesn't mean he should act high and mighty. Between you and me, our hero's more than a little capable if we're being honest. The other second-class students snicker at Kenya because they just know Alfred would be watching him like a hawk. Now he's done it. Kenya laments at how he outdid himself by standing out too much while Kaguya quietly packs up her things. She gets up and is about to leave, but not before saying Alfred only told him that because he wanted to save face. Kenya calls out to her, but Reina intervenes, reminding him of his promise. Getting an invitation from the Ice Princess herself is enough to send him to the moon. But right now his priority is Kaguya. With that, he clasps his hands and apologizes to Reina, saying he has plans today. He was already out the door before she could even ask for her info, with our hero promising they could do it tomorrow. Meanwhile, Kaguya's already walking a few feet ahead before Kenya calls out to her. She stops and turns just as he asks if she would like to have some tea with him after this, since there's something he'd like to ask about. She lets out an exasperated sigh, condoning him for simping over the Imperial girl not 2 seconds ago. In his defense, he has a deeper reason for that. But seeing Kaguya's reaction just now is enough to get him disheartened. Maybe it was wrong of him to get involved with both girls at the same time. Suddenly, Kenya becomes a sad boy, manipulative, shrinking himself and mumbling that it's impossible for a girl on Kaguya's level to get with him. No? Kaguya's heart thawed, seeing him like that, so she had to explain that it's not what he thinks. It's just that today's not ideal for her, but she'd go with him if it were another day. Kenya couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was she being serious? Kaguya had to tell him that she's not lying, and to her shock, our hero is crying. Was this really worth crying about? Kenya was so overwhelmed with happiness that he didn't notice that he was already crying. He wipes his tears away, citing that he must be too happy. But the moment he does so, more tears start to pour out. He knows this shouldn't be a big deal, but for the loser, him being rejected was the norm for our guy. He got so used to being alone that for the first time, he felt the joy of someone actually wanting to be with him. Before he starts bawling and humiliates himself even more, Kenya thrusts his device at Kaguya, asking to exchange contact information with her. Hey now, why is he suddenly using his tears to guilt-trip her into doing this? But whatever, Kaguya's a softie after all. They eventually exchanged contact info and went their separate ways. Kaguya returns to her home, thinking of turning in early tonight because of how exhausting today was. That's when she noticed her balcony door was open. In her mind, she knows she laid the traps, but she couldn't believe even those were evaded. Has her real identity been exposed? From behind, a man in a mask creeps behind her with a knife, but Kaguya manages to skillfully evade all of his attacks. On his last thrust, Kaguya grabs his arm and pulls a Black Widow move on him as they both fall on the floor. She wrestles the knife out of her assailant's hand, angry that he dared to sneak up on her. Just then, the man tells her that he's tapping out, and with his other hand, he removes his mask to reveal that he's actually Kaguya's dad. The older man commented on how she has slackened on her vigilance, but it's nice to see Kaguya still keeping up with her training. Kaguya changes out of her uniform and boils water so she can have tea with her dad. Did her old man really just come here to tease her? That's when he tells her that he just wanted to check in on her. Can a dad be worried about his daughter going to the enemy's school? She hands him his cup and assures him that she was welcomed just fine. If anything, she knows folks back at the slums have it harder, so this much is nothing. Plus, she's also risking her life as one of the Amaterasu too. So this is Kaguya's father, Isshin Akagami. Amaterasu is the Yamato Liberation Alliance, which is a resistance led by the former Yamato Army lieutenant, which is yours truly. Together with the other survivors of the former Yamato army scattered across Colony 13, they continue to fight for the reclamation of Yamato. Now, back to the father-daughter bonding. Ishin can't help but be worried for her because if anything happened to Kaguya, then he wouldn't be able to face his wife and Jin. Kaguya points out that he already said that many times before, so he should be honest and tell her the real reason why he's here. It's gotta be some pretty big news, no? Ishin straight up tells her that the Taikyoku Federation is making a move, which only means that it's time to reclaim Yamato. This federation is a coalition of countries led by the Asian superpower called Chubu. It's also the largest confederation in the world, excluding the Asgard Empire. Ishin tells her that 5 years have passed since Asgard colonized Yamato. Ever since then, all they could do was defend themselves. But with Chubu's support, it's about time the Federation goes on the offensive. Finally, it's time. Kaguya vows to avenge every single one of them. And we have to admit she's giving Eren Yeager vibes in this panel. Anyway, her dad tells her this is why they're planning an operation soon, and the plan is to seize KOGs being transported from the Asgard Empire. If they pull this off, it will only show the Chubu that they're pretty powerful, with the latter seeing them as equals, thus allowing them to negotiate better. Ishin couldn't stress enough the importance of KOGs, which is why he wants her to be proficient with the machine by then. At the mention of that, Kaguya also opens up about how she met someone interesting, a Yamato native who is quite strong, and yes, it's none other than Kenya. Now this piqued Ishin's interest. What kind of person is he? Kaguya says that she's pretty confident that there's no one who can beat this guy within Amaterasu. He might even be stronger than the Ice Princess herself. Her dad finds it astonishing that someone like that actually exists. After all, it's pretty rare for monster figures like Lord Asgard to appear during the turning points of an era. But maybe this appearance of the Yamato prodigy is an exception to the usual occurrences. But more important than that, Kaguya remembers Kenya's kindness. She didn't say this out loud, but just remembering it is enough to make her face flush. Of course, this didn't go unnoticed by her dad, who asked why her face was red. She tries to brush it off, but whatever. Ishin tells her that if this Yamato native is really strong, then he'd like to recruit him as an ally. But the final decision is his to make. Ishin sneaks a peek at his daughter, saying if only Kaguya had a bigger rack, then maybe she could convince him to join. Kaguya is every bit similar to her mom after all, except for the chess part. This summoned Kaguya's inner demon, manifesting as she cracks her knuckles, ready to beat her dad to a pulp. That harmless comment Ishin said cost him a bonk on the head. Just give him a break, he's just a sleazy old man. As for the Yamato native, she needs more time to assess what kind of guy he is. Ishin becomes serious, turning to her as he tells her that if she thinks she can trust him, then Kaguya should bring him here. After all, her dad trusts her as much as he trusts his own intuition. Finally wrapping up their conversation. Meanwhile, at the Asgard dormitory, Kenya collapses in bed and stares at the ceiling. The exhaustion of the day finally crept up on him as he remembered everything that had happened today. Despite all that, he still can't believe he's transported to the world of KOG. He knows the worldview of the game, but he quickly learned that just knowing about it isn't enough. For Kaguya and the others, this is their reality, being belittled by the Asgardian citizens since their colonization. It's not enough to fight just like how he does in the game. In the original storyline, he never helped Kaguya or fought Reina, but so far the main plot seems to have remained the same. With that said, he makes a mental note to practice caution and avoid being unable to predict future developments. As the story progresses, he needs to actively engage with both Kaguya and Reina so he can change the future that is bound to come. Speaking of Kaguya, she sends him a message to check if she got his number right. Other than that, he also knows what lies ahead if the storyline remains unchanged, and that would be the death of many. The Emperor of the Asgard Empire will wage a war that will involve the whole world. It's basically world domination and a world war. The very idea of it is something Kenya doesn't want to think about. For some unexplainable reason, the bathroom is one of the best places to contemplate life. Is it a collective experience? Because right now, Kenya is pretty deep in thought under the shower. He rethinks the whole scenario and how the story will progress from here. Apart from Kaguya, there's also Reina Sylphide he needs to save, who is coincidentally also bathing right now as we speak. The daughter of the strongest knight in the Asgard Empire, Reina didn't give 2 cents no matter what Kenya did back in the game. But to save her, he needs to get closer to her. And thankfully, he already has an idea of how. And what do you know, Kaguya's bathing right now as well. We all know she's a member of the Resistance, the Yamato Liberation Alliance called Amaterasu. Kenya can't really walk up to her and tell her to quit the alliance because of how she's been poorly treated there during her training years. If anything, Kenya believes that Kaguya would only find true happiness if she could reclaim Yamato. In the original storyline, They were enemies from the start, with their fates intertwined in the way that if you save one, the other dies, and vice versa. Kenya gets out of the bath while also thinking that he needs to find a way to juggle rising through the ranks in Asgard while also making sure that the resistance gains something out of it. It's a pretty delicate goal that even he wonders if he can pull it off. There's always the danger that everything could go wrong if he chased both goals. Still, Kenya's willing to do everything just so he can save both Kaguya and Reina. He's already in simp mode again, thinking that they could end up in a throuple. You know, a threesome couple. Just then, he receives a message from Reina, reminding him of their meeting tomorrow at the simulation chamber. His mood dropped a little, but what did he expect? Reina has always been business-minded and straight to the point. But then again, is it possible that she sent it to the wrong person? The next day, Kenya makes a break for it and arrives in front of the simulation chamber at 7:06 a.m. The Ice Princess was already there, annoyed that he's 6 minutes late. Kenya could only heave an apology, out of breath from running. There's a good reason why he's late, and it's because he was up all night researching this world. On top of that, he was also a night owl back then, so his body is still adjusting to the daytime. Reina tells him to fix his sleeping habits and come on time. She only has a limited time in the morning. What a battle addict this girl is. Still, this contrast in her personality just makes her even more appealing in Kenya's eyes, getting all giddy and hugging himself because he just can't contain how he finds her so attractive. Meanwhile, Reina's all weirded out by his actions. Was he really the same skilled pilot from yesterday? He's all sloppy and weird right now. Well, whatever, she'll find out soon enough anyway. She swipes the key card and asks Kenya to promise her one thing. Whenever they train, Kenya won't hold back. Then she shouldn't cry later, acting all cocky that made Reina flustered. How dare he look down on her? He can't help but laugh at how serious she is and everything, something that gets Reina even more flustered. He apologizes for teasing her so much. It's just that he can't help it since it's not every day he gets to see a side of Reina like this. Reina, on the other hand, is even more frustrated because she can't keep it together whenever she talks to him. A second later, she clears her throat and regains her composure. No, she refuses to be swept away by his flow, and this must be part of his antics too. She's back to her Ice Princess mode as she reminds him that Kenya is the loser and the challenger between them, but instead of being intimidated, it only gets him fired up. So that became their setup. In the morning, Kenya practices KOG piloting with Reina and sleeps throughout the rest of Alfred's class, much to the older man's chagrin. Just like that, a few days passed, allowing him to adjust pretty easily. Right now, the class is busy running laps as Alfred barks that pilots should have stamina. He was mad as heck at the students falling behind. Thankfully, Kenya isn't the last, though he does have poor stamina. As he sits and catches his breath, Kaguya hands him a water bottle. She finds it weird that he could pilot a KOG pretty well, and yet he looks so pitiful with how weak he is. Anyway, she wants to know what the tea is, leaning over Kenya's ear to ask what he did. What? Kenya only hums because he knows what she's talking about. How can he not when he can feel Reina shooting daggers his way? Even Kaguya notices how the other has gotten way meaner recently. She urges Kenya to just apologize to the Ice Princess, but he can't exactly apologize when Reina is the one who told him not to hold back, right? Oh, so this is about morning practice. Kaguya tries to act nonchalant, saying that the two seem to have gotten much closer. Kenya jokingly teases her, asking if she's jealous. Kaguya is close to mauling him, chasing after Kea just as Alfred announces that they're done for the day. Alright, it's finally a rest day for Kenya. Or so he thought, because both girls called out to him just when he was ready to bounce. The girls raised one eyebrow at each other. Reina went ahead and told Kaguya that she has business with Kenya, so who is she? At that, Kaguya motions for our hero that he should explain to Reina just who she is. He should tell her about their plans for tomorrow. It's happening, Kenya's harem dreams. The ladies get into a stare-down, standing on their own respective businesses. Pray tell, why is the Lady of the Empire obsessed with a second-class loser like Kenya? Reina rebuts that this is none of Kaguya's business. What's Kaguya's relationship with him anyway? Wait, is Kaguya Kenya's girlfriend? Kaguya drew a blank when she heard that, quickly followed by her flustered rebuttal that no one would go out with a pervert like Kenya. Ouch, harsh. The two of them, they're just, well, what are they? She turns to Kenya asking what they are. How the hell would he know what they are? But more importantly, why is Kaguya suddenly being so assertive right now? On Reina's part, he understands, so he tries to calm both ladies. That's when he finally remembered that event. Reina turns to him, reminding him of his promise to fight her whenever. Kaguya, on the other hand, reminds him that he was the one who asked for a date, right? At the mention of the date, Reina deduces that Kaguya really is his girlfriend, so Kaguya has to clarify that it's not the date she has in mind. Kenya stands awkwardly behind them as both ladies continue to bicker. But at least he has a sense of self-preservation, thinking that if he doesn't resolve this well, then it will be hell for him. Since the two were busy fighting, he took this chance to leave. but they only glared at him. In the end, he suggests the three of them spar together. The winner gets to pick whatever they want to do afterward, deal? Both girls look at each other before giving their answer. Reina's cool with that, as long as she gets to spar with Kenya. It's all cool for Kaguya too, since she could use the practice. And it's a win for Kenya. He was about to take his leave again when both girls firmly grabbed him by the shoulders, presenting him with a new problem. Just whose side is he on? Crap, he can't break free. These girls are hella strong as expected from soldiers. He starts to panic, wondering what to do when an idea pops into his head. Fast forward to moments later, the three of them are in front of the simulator room. Kenya couldn't be thankful enough for how Reina is with them. If it were just him and Kaguya, then Alfred would never allow them to use the simulator. Reina uses the keycard to open the room, with all three of them walking inside. Kaguya comments on how their instructor was pretty pissed at their request. Well, Reina's not too shocked, since it's national policy after all, for second-class citizens to be more submissive. But even she can't help but notice how her fellow men are going too far recently. With that said, Kenya asks if she's okay with the two of them being second-class students. Reina doesn't really care about all that, and she also never thought of the two as inferior. Be that as it may, she's not stupid enough to rebel against the Emperor. Enough chit-chat, they should begin now. The rules are simple: if they take 3 hits, then they're out. The three of them get into their respective cockpits quickly, followed by the start of the simulation. Seeing Kenya in his KOG, she had her suspicions, but what do you know? Kenya's specialty is dual-wielding after all. Kaguya feels a little pissed, so does this mean he's been holding back all this time? Kenya tells them that he's been fighting with full force from the start. It's just that today would require him to put in more effort, hence the sword in both his hands. The girls spared no second and instantly lunged straight at him, only to be met with nothingness. Their swords struck nothing since Kenya's not there. He outmaneuvered them, quickly positioning himself at their backs. What they did was a good effort, but it's not enough to take him down. This time he goes on the offensive, with both his swords raised and ready to strike. Of course, it's no surprise that both ladies suffered straight losses against Kenya. This should be enough, right? They need to wrap it up for today. Reina and Kaguya are both sullen, with the former sulking because this is just Kenya's way to run away. He tries to give them a little credit. They did land a hit on him today, but Kaguya can't forgive the fact that it took both their efforts to just land one hit on him. But a deal's a deal. Reina concedes for today as much as she hates it. Kaguya thanks her since it was good practice for her. That's when Reina tells her that she can't even call that practice, making Kenya antsy. What is she doing? Is she making this worse? Of course, that struck a nerve on Kaguya's end. Just as Reina continued to point out the former's flaw, Kaguya was like a beast who rushed head-on, even with just simple taunts. She was just about to square up against Reina had Kenya not been holding her back, and if not for what the other girl told her. That one attack she landed on Kenya was pretty good, Reina had to admit. That one compliment was more than enough to turn Kaguya docile. Happy to be praised like that. She's so easy. Seeing the two of them like this, Kenya feels a little relieved since both ladies seem to be getting along just fine. It's worth the effort after all. But of course, Reina had to add another biting remark. She tells Kaguya that if she could always move like that, then they'd have a worthy warm-up. This time, Kenya really holds her back and says they should go. Kaguya turns to him, confused. Where are they going? Where else but the date, of course. At the mention of that, Kaguya suddenly turns into a cat, incapable of human speech. But Kenya took this chance to take their leave, pushing Kaguya as he bid Reina goodbye. The Ice Princess tried to say something, but the other two were already hurrying out the door. Reina was left there standing, and for some reason she couldn't explain the pain she was feeling in her chest. Is she about to catch a cold or something? Anyway, she turns and remembers that she needs to return the card. Unknown to her, Alfred had been watching them all along, with his face pressed hard against the glass. Maybe he should report this to the war god Sieg, including that irregular second-class brat. Outside, Kaguya walks ahead of Kenya and he has to call out to her multiple times before she finally turns to look at him. She's still in cat mode, obviously still panicking at what's happening. So Kenya was kind enough to save her from this embarrassment by saying he knows there's something she wants to talk to him about and that the date was just an excuse. At the mention of that, she lowers her eyes, saying she would have just preferred to go on a date. Oh no, he messed up. He could have just gone on a normal date with her, but he still needed to have that talk with Kaguya. She adds that it's also not something they can talk about so freely in public. Well, that would be a problem. Kenya lives at the dorm, so he's not allowed to bring girls with him. What should they do? She just about lost it, threatening to murder him if he did something weird. Seeing her reaction only made him want to tease her even more. She stops in mid-action when her stomach grumbles loudly. Now that he remembers it, they went straight to key practice without even having lunch. But as fate would have it, they're right in front of the mart. He has an idea. The two purchase a couple of ingredients before they go to her place. Kaguya did not expect that Kenya could cook too. Well, isn't anyone capable of at least simple cooking? Kaguya's stuttering is a dead giveaway that she's a poor cook. In her defense, she can at least cook rice, and she can help with cutting out the vegetables or some other stuff. Kenya tells her that she can just rest while he cooks, or rather she should just take a shower or something. Kenya really believed he just delivered a cool line, and just look at him. He's pretty sure he looks gallant right now with how he's showing consideration for her, but it just had the opposite effect. It made her grab the knife, threatening to cut off his tongue. The two bicker for a little more until finally the curry is done. Kaguya looks at the meal with shining eyes while Kenya only hopes that she likes it. Kenya puts his hands together and says, "Itadakimasu," catching Kaguya off guard. He notices her staring, prompting him to ask if anything's wrong. Kaguya also puts her hands together, smiling because it's been a while since she heard that. She takes a bite and her face lights up at how good it tastes. She reluctantly praises him for his culinary skills, which is a bit frustrating since it's another thing Kenya's better at. Our hero, on the other hand, gets right into business. He asks her why she's at the night school. Kaguya carefully answers that it's because of her goal. He prods further, asking if what she means is to fight the Empire. Kaguya doesn't answer, so Kenya reaches out to touch her hand, assuring her that it's okay. He tells her outright that he's on her side with as much sincerity as he can. Kaguya still keeps quiet, though in his mind, Kenya's being serious. If he doesn't do anything now, he's sure Kaguya will die. She smiles a little, albeit a sad one, as she gets up and tells him that her goal is to exact revenge on those who took what was important to them. She grabs the family photo, clarifying that what she really wants to reclaim is a place where everyone belongs, which is their Yamato. 5 years ago, shortly after Asgard colonized Yamato, the country still had a lot of areas that remained uninhabitable. As if that wasn't bad enough, the people of Yamato also had to live in fear of the lawless and rampaging Imperial soldiers. There were even rumors of people getting kidnapped, with many believing it was the work of Imperial soldiers. A young Kaguya struggles walking on her way home, accompanied by a dark-haired, taller man, her older brother, Jin Akagami. Seeing her struggle, Jin tells her that she should just say if the bag is too heavy. At 10 years old, Kaguya remains as stubborn as ever, telling her older brother how she can carry even this much. More importantly, Jin's concerned about what they can do while waiting for their father since Ishin went out to look for food. He turns to Kaguya, who refuses to look at him, whistling as she walks. Before Jin could even say anything, she exposed herself, saying that the sound was definitely not her stomach grumbling. Jin can only laugh as he tells her baby sister that she doesn't need to hide that. He hands him a piece of candy, but Kaguya rejects it, saying she's on a diet. Aha, so that's the reason why she hasn't been growing. She tries to rebut, saying she's still in her growth phase when Jin shoves the candy in her mouth. Kaguya rained punches on her older brother, who only laughed at her efforts. Jin asks if it was tasty, and she says it was. Jin pats her head, promising her that she'd always eat her fill. Life was so hard back then, but as long as she had her family and endured, Kaguya firmly believed that the happy times would come again. Embarrassed as she was, Kaguya thanked Jin for the candy, and her older brother only grinned in reply. She walks ahead saying they should also look for food themselves, since it would be a waste of time if they just waited for their father. Jin tells her not to run too far ahead when suddenly, she hears an unfamiliar voice call out to her. Just like that, she's reminded of how their country of Yamato turned into a living nightmare, with one of the demons right in front of her, an Imperial soldier. Kaguya tries to run back toward Jin, but the creep was faster, drawing her back just as Jin rushed over to her. But Jin stopped dead in his tracks when the creep pulled out a knife and pointed it at Kaguya, threatening to hurt her if he took another step. He doesn't want to get his cute little sister hurt, does he? Jin can only glare at the creep as he realizes that this was the kidnapper from the rumors all along. The bastard even had the guts to add that he's the kidnapper of Yamato's women, especially the young ones. Apparently the little ones are quite popular with the perverted nobles. Jin reassures her that everything will be alright and that he'll save her, pulling something out of his jacket, when suddenly another man appears and shanks Jin without remorse. They were only interested in Kaguya and did not need men like Jin. Jin paled, shocked at the unexpected turn of events since he didn't expect there were two of them. Meanwhile, Kaguya stood horrified at how his brother was attacked. His assailant pulls out his knife, which leads to Jin bleeding profusely as he collapses on the ground. The man slowly makes his way toward Kaguya, with the latter helplessly calling out to Jin. Finally, she snaps and shouts his name over and over so much that the first creep has to hold her back with more force. As for the other guy, he tells his partner that he should hurry and take Kaguya away, since it would be bad if she made a lot of noise. As if that creep wasn't bad enough, he points the knife at Kaguya again while telling his partner that they should do some taste tests. What a sick, perverted bastard this one is. He went ahead and pulled Kaguya's clothing apart, claiming that it's only natural to taste test for poison before they hand her over to the nobles. Poor Kaguya could only back up as this sick bastard crept up on her, excited at how he'll get a taste of her. Back at home, this was forbidden, but in Yamato, he can do so without worrying. Kaguya flails and fights back with all her might while still calling out to her brother. Meanwhile, Jin's assailant remains unfazed. If anything, he just wants his partner to get it over with. He was just about to smoke, complaining about how he doesn't get what makes kids like Kaguya so appealing, when he felt something. As he turns to look, it is Jin who dragged himself and stabbed the other man from the back. As the older guy coughed blood, he was still in shock at how this kid was still alive. Didn't he just die a while ago? Despite his wound, Jin told him that they shouldn't underestimate the people of Yamato. Finally, the other man collapsed, just as Jin got up to approach the lecher. Kaguya took this chance to fight back, kicking the lecher in his family jewels, then immediately made a break for it. She starts running toward Jin when the creep angrily pulls out his gun to shoot Kaguya. He aimed his gun at Kaguya, but the latter remained unharmed since Jin shielded her from the bullet. Poor Kaguya can only call out to her brother again while Jin bleeds even more. He tells her that he promised their mom that he'd protect her even at the cost of his own life. The creep only got more pissed at Jin's determination and shot him again. He tells Jin that losers like him should know their own place. Since he rebelled against an Imperial soldier, no one would care what he does to Jin. This old creep was so caught up with the thought of tormenting Jin that he failed to hear the running footsteps that came from behind him. He didn't even get to finish his monologue before Ishin appeared and put an extra slit on his body. The sicko collapses on the ground. Meanwhile, somewhere nearby, they could hear voices talking about the gunshots they just heard. This alarmed Ishin as he realized these two sickos weren't alone. He then turns to Kaguya and Jin, looking distraught as he sees the state of his son. In tears, Kaguya asks what they should do since his brother is dying, but Jin could only apologize for messing up and muster a smile as he did so. Before Ishin could think of what to do, the voices from before were already behind them. Ishin takes the injured Jin and supports him, saying they should just all get out of here. They manage to walk through the tunnel, but because of the blood from Jin's injuries, they were easily tracked. Jin takes one look at Kaguya's face before he calls out to his dad, but Ishin was not having it. He promised Jin that he would protect them both, so it's fine. Jin shoves him, making his dad panic. Just what was he trying to do? The older man's eyes widened in fear at what his son was holding, a grenade. Ishin asked him what he was planning to do with that, with the latter saying that he can't go any further. His dad tries to talk him out of it, but Jin raises his voice, reminding Ishin that he has an important duty to reclaim Yamato, which is why he can't let his old man die here. Besides, he'd never let Kaguya fall into the hands of those creeps. Kaguya stubbornly tells him that she'll stay with Jin, clinging to his chest as she does so. Kaguya removes his jacket and puts it over Kaguya, apologizing for scaring her like this. He wipes the tears off her face, saying she'll be facing many more hardships in the future, and that there may even come a time when she wants to die. Jin only wants her to promise him one thing, and it's to never give up. Her older brother tells her that nothing's more important than surviving, and it's also one of the important reasons why they have to take back their, no, everybody's Yamato. He also made Ishin promise him this before turning back and telling them to get out of there. The older Akagami wanted to say something, but held himself back to say sorry. He did tell Jin that he has always been proud of him, promising that he will take back Yamato. Jin smiles and nods in approval while Ishin grabs Kaguya. She tries to fight back, resisting her father so that Ishin has no choice but to carry her away from there. Kaguya cries out even louder, asking Jin not to leave her, but the latter refuses to look at her and only looks ahead. This was the last time she saw her brother's back. Moments after Ishin and Kaguya were out of the tunnel, an explosion lit up the area. The image of the smoke rising to the sky was etched on Kaguya's mind, and the present was the day she made up her mind. She vowed to exact retribution on the empire that took everything from her. Back to the present. Kaguya tells Kenya that she has carried out her brother's wish to reclaim Yamato for everyone. Kenya, who listened to all of this, finally understood where Kaguya's determination was coming from, and how her will to fight would never change. Finally, he speaks and thanks her for sharing the reason why she joined the resistance. For her, she's just infiltrating the academy after all. Kenya looks at her straight in the eyes and says he will also join the resistance. He didn't say that this was the reason why he came into this world after all, since it would be much easier to protect her if he were by her side. She warns him that this would mean his life would be in danger, and he would also have to kill people. But Kenya's fine with that, he's the strongest after all. Besides, it's a much better option than letting Kaguya die. She didn't expect to hear him say that with such a serious look. She smiles and thanks him, saying she already had a hunch Kenya would say that. Great, everything is going pretty well for him. With this, he could become Kaguya's ally, but wait, something's not right. Kenya's vision starts to spin as sleepiness washes over him. Kaguya looks at him with a blank expression, saying it must be the effect of the drug. She assures him that it's nothing serious, just a sleeping pill. He asks her why she did this, and her reply is that she wants to trust him, but there's still a part of her that can't fully commit to doing so. By now, Kenya's teetering on the brink of unconsciousness, and all he can think about is how he just wanted to take the easiest route to get on Kaguya's good side. As he collapses on the floor, Kenya realizes that he hasn't gotten enough affection points yet after all. Kaguya only stares at his unconscious body while some unknown personnel enter her room. Still, she's surprised that Kenya knows about the resistance. And since they're already here, there's no going back, so she apologizes to him again in advance for what's about to happen. A switch turns on, instantly lighting a lone light bulb. The sudden light stirs Kenya awake as he looks around, wondering where he is. Both his hands and legs are tied to the chair, and even though it's useless, he tries to shake them off. He recaps the last thing he remembers. He was just eating curry with Kaguya when he suddenly felt sleepy. But wait, she did mention a drug. He still has no idea about all that when he hears someone suddenly ask if he's awake. Kenya turns in the direction of the voice and his eyes instantly widen. The voice tells him that he didn't want to be rough, but given their circumstances, they had no choice but to be careful. Kenya's mouth hangs open as he finds himself face to face with the leader of the resistance, Isshin Akagami, and more importantly, Kaguya's dad. With the aura of 1,000 soldiers, Isshin tells him that he's pleased to finally meet Kenya. Before he begins the interrogation, Isshin chats with Kenya a little. From what he has heard, the boy has been taking good care of Kaguya from the start. With that said, he wished to express his heartfelt gratitude toward Kenya as he leaned back and bowed to Kenya while thanking him. Kenya gets flustered seeing the older man bow before him. He urges Isshin to raise his head, and it's not like he did anything special, he just did what anyone would have done. In his mind, Kenya's thanking whatever deity's out there since his first impression looks good. That's until the older man spoke and told him the real reason why he was here. In a moment, gone was the well-mannered older man as Isshin glared and asked Kenya what he was. Kenya just about bit his tongue and crapped his pants with how Isshin is staring at him intensely. Outside, Kaguya is busy doing menial chores with a fellow resistance member. Her companion noticed how she's been pulling quite a face ever since she got back. Is there something wrong? Kaguya's brows furrow even further, muttering about how she knows she's the one who brought in Kenya, but she's still unsettled. Her father told her that he would just talk to Kenya, so she should just wait. She can't help but worry for that idiot after all. Back to the interrogation, Isshin shows Kenya all the information he gathered as he investigated the boy. So far, her daughter buys his act, but what about Isshin? Not so much. How could he when Kenya's background is all blank? There's not a single piece of information about him before he entered the academy, as if someone deliberately erased it. Now that made Kenya panic more. He forgot to have his own backstory. To be fair, he thought the game would randomly decide that for him. Following this logic, Isshin has his suspicions that Kenya may be a spy from the Empire, which is why they're having this little talk right now. So just what is Kenya? Kenya still can't think of anything. He's drawing a blank given how he's put on the spot like this. Meanwhile, Isshin glowers at him, asking why the boy's not answering. In his mind, Kenya weighs his options and thinks the older man wouldn't believe that he came from another world. So what else is there to say? Suddenly, someone injects something into Kenya's arm. He panics, asking what the older man did. Isshin said it was a truth serum and continued to glower at Kenya. Since they're in the middle of a fight to reclaim their country, they can't afford to show mercy even to a kid like Kenya. Upon hearing that, Kenya starts to grow dizzy as Isshin begins to question him, starting with his name, where he's from, and where he learned about the resistance. Kenya honestly answers them all, saying he came from Tokyo. Isshin's a little surprised that Kenya really was the boy's name, and when he heard Tokyo, it made the older man think that Kenya really must be from Yamato. When Isshin asked about Kenya's family, a sadness passed over our hero's face. He tells the older man that there's no one because he was abandoned. Upon hearing this, he deduced that Kenya must be an orphan from the war. Still, he needs to continue with the interrogation. What was Kenya's objective? Before our hero could answer, someone pounded loudly on the door, accompanied by voices, with one trying to hold the young miss back. The door burst open thanks to Kaguya's loud pounding. She starts fuming at her dad, angry that he even used drugs on Kenya. Isshin maintains his strictness. Didn't he tell Kaguya that she shouldn't be here? The other guy with Kaguya had to hold her back as she was ready to throw hands at his dad. Sure, Kenya has no boundaries and is a bit weird, but he's no spy. Isshin raises his voice at his daughter, ordering her not to intervene. Kenya may be a man who's worthy of Kaguya's approval, and even Isshin himself would like to trust the boy immediately. But her old man reminds her that he has a duty to reclaim Yamato. Other resistance force members are also watching the interrogation unfold in the surveillance room. Isshin stresses that the choice of letting Kenya become a member also carries the weight of the lives of the other Amaterasu members. And for that, they can't trust our hero easily. Kaguya could only grit her teeth, but she knew her dad was right. Now back to Kenya. Isshin turns to our hero and asks him again what his objective is. This time, he has a gun pointed at Kenya's forehead as he does so. Kenya clenches his fist and decides to tell them everything, even if they won't understand. He tells Isshin that he wants to help Kaguya. He adds how he was abandoned and lost his place in the world, to the point that he felt that nothing mattered anymore. Kenya wasn't able to save the ones who saved his life right when he was about to end it. alluding to both Kaguya and Reina. That was the reason why Kenya came here, so that he'll be able to save them this time. If Ishin thinks he still can't trust him, then Kenya urges the older man to shoot him. Kenya finally raises his head and asks Ishin with all his resolve to let him join the Amaterasu. Our hero maintained eye contact and held the other's gaze as he bared his true feelings. Ishin lowered his gun and instantly broke out in tears. As the resistance, they've saved the country, but it never occurred to him that there were people like Kenya who wanted to return the favor. Kaguya's old man was so touched that he couldn't stop crying, but he had heard enough now. Also, those drugs from before? Yeah, those were nothing, just a small dose of anesthesia which will wear off soon. From the surveillance room, the other resistance members can't help but break out in either a smile or a sigh of relief. They already expected this much from their resistance leader, though he did pretty well on his act at least until halfway through. One of the guys says it's all good since they know Kenya's one of them, right? Back to the interrogation room. Kaguya tells our hero that he's been had, while her companion adds that Ishin has never really been good with things like this. Speaking of Ishin, the older man is on his knees, bowing with his forehead touching the floor as he apologizes for testing Kenya like this. Kenya doesn't hold it against the guy since he knows there are some things they need to do, so Ishin should raise his head. With that, Ishin extends his hand as he welcomes Kenya to the resistance. Our hero's a little surprised, but he still took the older man's hand and even dared to call him father. For that, Ishin called him out for getting ahead of himself. They finally leave the interrogation room as Ishin finally shows him where most of their people are, saying it's like a base camp. Ishin explains that the situation in the suburbs looks similar to this, unlike the urban areas. Despite occupying Yamato for more than 5 years, there are still a lot of places the Empire hasn't touched yet. People who were unable to enter the Empire system end up here, where they live in secret. They walk on with Ishin leading the way as Kenya asks where they are going. The older man told him that there's something he wants to show Kenya. They enter a warehouse, but the inside is too dark until Ishin pulls the lever to reveal the big secret. The spotlights illuminate the KOG in the middle of the room, a real cog. It's an Imperial mass-produced model of the Kquez, and it's the only one working at the moment. Kenya's eyes twinkled in excitement. It's like Christmas came early. However, why was Ishin showing him this? The older man told him that he wants Kenya to man the KOG for the operation that will take place tomorrow. He hands Kenya the boot-up key, asking if he could do it, to which our hero says yes. As soon as the cockpit opens, Kenya hurriedly gets inside and boots the KOG system. Now it really felt like it was Christmas for Kenya. He was all smiles, excited to finally pilot the real deal, when Ishin told him not to do any flashy moves. Too late, Kenya's already jumping around doing acrobatics and breakdancing just like Bumblebee with the KOG. This time, it was Ishin's turn to be speechless. You know what, maybe what Kaguya said was right. Maybe there really was a genius in Yamato too. Kenya's breakdancing spree only stopped when Kaguya showed up, asking him how long he was going to do that for. If he keeps that up, everyone will be surprised. As soon as she said this, Kenya got out of the cockpit with Ishin explaining on our hero's behalf. Kenya smiles sheepishly, saying he got too into it since it was the real deal. Kaguya, on the other hand, hands him a bag. They were a change of clothes that she went ahead and picked for Kenya, knowing her dad would have forgotten all about it. Kenya thanks her for the effort, of which the latter shyly says that it's just the obvious thing to do. Suddenly, someone calls out to Kaguya, and when she turns, it is a group of kids. She just told them that they're not allowed at the place, and that's when one of them exposed her, saying how Kaguya got so antsy the minute they got back. Oh ho, now this just gave Kenya confidence as she teases her, asking Kaguya if she got worried for him. As usual, she was just about to mouth off a rambling when one of the kids asked who Kenya was. Our hero drops low and introduces himself to them, saying he's Kaguya's classmate. 3 of the kids were already conversing about how Kaguya Ni, the Kaguya Ni with a difficult personality, actually got herself a man. Kaguya looms over these kids, asking them straight out who said she has a difficult personality. The kids froze in fear of the demoness, so they made a break for it, pulling Kenya along as they did so. She can't believe the guts of those kids. Where did they even learn that from? Ishin seems pleased that she brought Kenya, and he kind of understands why her daughter is with her choice as well. Still, he can't help but comment on Kaguya's pacing. He can't believe she just introduced a man she just met to her dad already. Isn't it a bit too early? In reply, Kaguya had to dropkick his father for even thinking of that. At the encampment, Kenya spent a great deal of time playing with the kids, eating and even bathing with them. Once night came, everybody got their own futons out and slept together in one big room side by side. Kaguya and Kenya were the last to sleep, with the kids in between them. He comments on how fast the children fell asleep, which was no surprise since they were running around a lot. Since they're the only ones awake, Kaguya also took this opportunity to apologize to Kenya for dragging him all the way out here. For him, he didn't mind, though he was a bit surprised. If he's being honest, this has been the first time in a long while that his surroundings have gotten so lively, which made him happy. Kaguya's glad to hear that. They talk a little more, with Kenya asking if she's always this busy whenever she goes back home. Kaguya says it's only when she's here. She proceeds to share about the kids' background. All of the kids at the camp lost their families during the fight with the Empire. And right now, they're at the age where they want attention. For Kaguya, she just wants to do as much as she can for them. Here, she wants them to grow up healthy and strong. Seeing her speak so genuinely like that made Kenya comment on how she would make a great mother. Of course, receiving compliments is not Kaguya's forte, as she blushed and turned away. She tells him to stop saying stupid things and get some sleep since tomorrow's operation is important. With that, the two of them bid goodnight to each other goodnight. As Kenya was about to settle into his futon, the girl beside him grabbed her hand and started mumbling in her sleep. She calls him Papa, with Kenya saying he's just a high schooler. But the girl, Azusa, starts crying, asking her Papa not to leave her in her sleep. Kenya felt so sorry for her that she continued holding her hand to comfort her. The next day, a large ship is docked at the port carrying a large shipment. Every team of the resistance got into position and is ready to move. Ishin tells them that the success of this operation will be a big step for Yamato, which is why he wants them to stay focused. Kaguya is in the control room with the others, just as Operation Key Capture commences. Meanwhile, Kenya's already on board the KOG, hiding out in plain sight and waiting for command. That is the end of the recap at Chapter 8. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.